Simple tomato soup that will make you never want to eat out of the can again. And if you've never made your own tomato soup before, you might not know how easy it is. First, we're going to turn the oven up to 450 so we can roast all the vegetables. First, we are going to slice up one full onion. This doesn't have to be perfect. Obviously, just slice into some somewhat smaller onion pieces. And we are going to dice up our tomatoes. You can use kind of whatever tomatoes you feel like. I used 7 total tomatoes here. These are just tomatoes off the vine, but choose whatever ones that you have around your house. Then just add that to the dish of the onions. Next, we are going to slice up 1/2 of a bell pepper. I prefer red bell pepper, but it really doesn't matter what color, just probably not green. Combine this all together with the other vegetables. Then we are going to drizzle with a little bit of olive oil and spread all that around. Next, I'm going to season with a little bit of salt and pepper. And then I sometimes add fresh basil. I had some fresh dried basil that I grew this summer. So sprinkled that over the top. Then we're going to add in some garlic, and you could use whole garlic cloves here, but I didn't have any, so we are just throwing in the garlic tonight, whatever you have. Place this into the oven at 450 degrees, and we're going to let that be in there for however long it takes. I don't really measure things, except for this broth that I'm putting in here. So this is chicken broth, 2 cups into a large pot. It's been about 20 minutes, so I'm going to stir this around and make sure everything is coated really good. And then we are going to push this back into the oven and turn the broiler on. You want to get a little bit of char on all of those vegetables, kind of like this. Once it starts looking like this, that's about when I call it done. After I turn the broiler on, I boiled the chicken broth on the stove, and then we are going to add these vegetables into that pot. At this point, I also turned down the heat on the stove because this gets hot. You're going to use an immersion blender, but you can also just use a regular blender if you do not have an immersion blender. And you are just going to blend this until there are no chunks left. This may take a few minutes because sometimes you get a few spare chunks. And that is seriously it. That is how you make tomato soup. Also, if you feel like the tomato soup is a little bit too tangy, you can also add in a little bit of cream before this, and that will cut down on that tang. Then we are going to top with a little bit of Parmesan, and we are going to enjoy. This is the best tomato soup that I have ever eaten. And of course, who can have tomato soup without a grilled cheese? If you've never made your own tomato soup before, I highly recommend trying this out. Say goodbye to the cans.